I'm Emily Chang, and this is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up in the next hour, our exclusive interview with President Trump's 2020 campaign manager, Brad Parscale, also known as the secret weapon who ran 5.9 million Facebook ads for Trump in 2016. His strategy for re-election amidst swirling concerns about Russian meddling. Plus, Google slapped with a $5 billion fine from EU antitrust enforcers who have ordered the company to change the way it puts search and browser apps on Android devices. European Union Competition Commissioner Margaret Vestager joins us ahead. Plus, Amazon finds its footing after a rough start with technical glitches on Prime Day. We will speak to the man who heads up the Prime business. But first, to our top story. The White House struggled to explain President Trump's behavior in a widely criticized news conference with Russian President Vladimir Putin this week. The president seemed to side with the Kremlin, questioning U.S. intelligence findings that Russia hacked the 2016 election, in essence attacking U.S. democracy. Since then, Trump has issued a belated clarification, undercut his own reversal, and then made new comments contradicting U.S. intelligence again, sending his spokeswoman out to deny it happened. As Trump-first headlines have swirled, we sat down with 2020 campaign manager on Tuesday, Brad Parscale, to try to get some clarity. Parscale helped then-candidate Trump run perhaps the most successful social media operation in presidential campaign history. So much so that Parscale has been elevated to running his entire re-election campaign for 2020, a job once held by Steve Bannon. Parscale worked closely with the likes of Facebook, Twitter, and Google to hone the campaign's digital micro-targeting strategy. One other company that Parscale worked with, the one that sits at the heart of Facebook's recent data scandal, Cambridge Analytica. We sat down with Parscale for an exclusive interview at a Mobile Marketing Association event in Sonoma, California, to talk about the groundwork he's laying for 2020 amidst concerns about Russian meddling.
Well, I think my focus right now is on the midterms. You have to understand, for 2020, holding the House and growing our lead in the Senate is very important. To get the agenda of the president done so that we have a great platform for 2020, it's important to hold those seats. And I think that what you see is, from a campaign standpoint, us producing some supportive role in that. We're not taking a lead role in 2018, but we're taking a supportive role. We have money, we have options, we have content and creative and things we can do to help. We can help from a GOTV standpoint. We can help in other ways in several DMAs. And that's an important role for us right now, is to make sure we can do everything from the president's campaign and from the committee that we can support them, and to make sure we do everything to hold the House in 18. Knowing what you know now, what are some lessons you've learned? What will you be doing differently? Well, that's a deep question. What's funny in 16 was I didn't have a basis of information, so I came in with a clean slate, which I actually think was an advantage for me in a lot of ways.
You'd never run a campaign before?
Never run a campaign before. Well, I'd run a campaign, just never a political campaign. Lots of product campaigns, which are different. So there was a lot of gaps, and I had some great support. The Republican National Committee came in. I had Jared Kushner side by side with me on a daily basis, fighting the battles, and he was my boss and was great. I had Eric Trump also, who had we bounced a lot of ideas off each other. They were an amazing family, and I had the best boss in the world, a guy that's our comms director. He's our political director, and he was always leading the right direction. But I think what really I learned was, how important it is to understand the data. I knew that going in, but now I even know it more. To learn to ask questions from those who've had experience. I've been doing that even more now. I've been doing a considerable amount of reading and understanding past electorates going back hundreds of years. I've done everything I could to educate myself on anything that's ever happened. This will be a much more grinded out long haul for me as campaign manager. It'll be but I also believe if the president finishes what he's going to do by getting rid of the unfair balance between China and the tariff problems, if he continues to grow this economy the way it does, people's wages keep increasing, personal economies improve. I think as he continues to solve national security issues and make the world safer, I don't know if it'll take me a lot of work. It might actually end up being where I could just drink Starbucks on Election Day.
You made 5.9 million Facebook ads last time around. Hillary Clinton made 66,000. Will you make that many again? I mean, this is for super, super precise micro-targeting.
Yeah. I don't know that answer yet. We have to see what the playing field is. You know, some days I wake up and I think that Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of them will maybe not play fairly.
What do you mean?
Well, maybe they decide that they want to make the API a little harder to do those things. Maybe, like right now, Facebook, it used to be that we could put an ad up in a few seconds. Now it takes a couple days. So it's really hard to put up 5.9 million ads when you can't use the API automatically.
And you recently met with Facebook executives.
I met with Facebook, and I brought up that as one of my items that I was very frustrated with. I went straight at them, and I said, you know, this is a kind of a change that is biased towards us. Understanding how our technology works, you created a rule which made it more difficult for us to use that. That's a frustrating standpoint. So maybe they do take that away from us. I don't think in the interim we'll figure out a way to do what we need to get done. I think by that time, and I think right now, we have a popular president. He's more popular than he was on Election Day. He's the most popular Republican president in modern history. And I think that we'll see a successful candidate Trump in 2020.
It's ironic that you're frustrated by Facebook, given that some people believe Facebook played a critical role in winning the election.
Well, I've been very specific that I think Facebook's how we won in a lot of ways. I think President Trump won. I think Facebook is that 0.1% that delivered his message. I think if Facebook wouldn't exist, it would have been a lot tougher. Facebook connected the country. It's connected rural America, cities, and people all across this country in different types of backgrounds. And it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, which was connect us all. I think Facebook also is a liberal company that maybe its management isn't, but it has an inherited bias, just like these other companies. It's based in a place that is probably extremely biased. I mean, I can see it today being up here talking to you. Northern California is not Eastern Kansas, and their employees have bias. And those decisions probably go into every line of code they write and everything they do. And that's going to be something they have to swap at and try to kill. But I will tell you, I do think Facebook, probably more than all the companies, is trying to kill it. The question you're asking me is whether or not they can crush that. And I don't know if they can. I think the inherent bias of those companies is significant. And I think it's up to me to be a person as a leader in our party and someone that's running the campaign to make sure that those companies are held accountable, that they do everything they can to try to kill those internal biases and to provide an even playing field for this country.
What about Twitter? How has your engagement been with them?
They did not contact me back from the letter that we sent. I have spoken to Mr. Dorsey a couple times. I do feel that company is even more squandered with bias. It's, I think the platform itself is not that useful other than putting out press releases and for the press to figure out what's going on in the country.
Also ironic, given that Twitter is the president's megaphone. And
no, that's what I said. It's great for press releases, but I do not think it's I explain it like this. Trying to convince somebody on Twitter of something is like going into a bar at 1:30 a.m. Right before they turn the lights on and try to sell somebody something. If you can do that, then you could sell something on Twitter. Facebook's much more like church on Sunday.
There's concerns about Facebook engagement and trust in social media. What are the digital platforms in 2020 that are going to matter most?
Yeah, I do think that YouTube from Google is going to end up playing a big role. I think as we see cable TV move over to internet-based kind of shows, the continued use of watching television and content on TV, on the internet, is a significant change from TV. And I do think YouTube will play a role, a larger role than it played in 2016. But
how so?
Well, I just think that where eyeballs go. Remember, eyeballs are finite in some ways, right? So you can only place them so many times. If you're watching Facebook for 4 hours this year, but next year you're watching 3 hours of Facebook, but 1 hour of YouTube, that changes. So we're going to monitor where eyes are going. I think YouTube continues and Google continues to work on that platform and make improvements. I think what Google's done to the search algorithm also to put YouTube results at the top, they continue to put a lot of focus and they understand the value of that platform. So we're watching it closely. We're using it for a lot of things now. We're using it probably more now than we even were in 2016, even this early out. So I do think it'll increase its role.
And how will you divide your budget between digital TV and
print? It's too early to make that kind of decision. I mean, you never know. I mean, YouTube could blow up and we're all watching YouTube on our phones and it skyrockets and it'll change my budget. When the day I have to make my budget decision and I make that with the team is the day I'll split that all up, and that might change hour by hour too as we see the data come in. I just hope that Google's paying attention to what Facebook and Twitter are doing. They're even a bigger company, probably more even biased, especially their CEOs actually invest their time and money directly in the races, where I think Zuckerberg has been probably better of trying to stay less biased in his own personal views. I mean, I think he has a view of what he believes a progressive America is, but I think he tries not to influence politics as much. I think Eric Schmidt and these other people directly try to influence it. I'll be curious to see if they're able to swat down the bias within their company and keep YouTube as a even playing field. I think right now conservatives are already starting to say that they've been shut out of YouTube. Videos are devalued within their algorithm based off some of the views within it. And conservative messages in America are important. There's still a lot of faith-based people in this country, and they believe in what that means, and I would hope that Google wouldn't cut any of that out.
You've been accused of crossing the line, of suppressing the black vote. You hired Cambridge Analytica. When you look back, do you think anything that you did? I've
been accused of it, or Bloomberg said
Bloomberg wrote a story
in a sentence that says it's not
quoting a Trump
me,
campaign official.
Yes.
That there were attempts to suppress the black vote.
A anonymous Trump campaign official, right? Yes. So, no, I mean, that's just not something we did. Did we show negative ads? Yes. Did we have any kind of direct intention to suppress anyone's vote? No, I believe in this country people should vote.
That was our exclusive conversation with President Trump's campaign manager, Brad Parscale. Shortly after this interview, President Trump did retreat from his statements in Helsinki, saying he does accept the conclusion that Russia meddled in the election, but as we mentioned, quickly introduced doubt on that very admission, saying it could be other people also. Meantime, this week, top Republican lawmakers attacked one of the legal protections most prized by social media companies. They're questioning whether Google and Facebook should be held liable for content posted by users. House Judiciary Chair Bob Goodlatte asked the companies why they should be treated differently from hotels, who face legal responsibility for illegal actions on their properties. Coming up, it is one of the most important days on the Amazon calendar, and this year it blew through spending records despite a big technical glitch. We'll speak to the exec in charge of Amazon Prime next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. Listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi says the ride-hailing company doesn't need to be profitable before a planned IPO in the second half of 2019. Speaking at the Fortune Brainstorm Conference in Aspen, Colorado this week, Khosrowshahi said he was more focused on generating positive cash flow than making the company profitable. Uber has burned through more than $10.7 billion since being founded in 2009. This week, shoppers brushed aside the technical glitches that marred the opening of Amazon Prime Day. Shoppers spent a record $4.2 billion during Prime Day sales, according to estimates from Wedbush Securities. That's up 33% from a year ago. The world's largest online retailer says sales in the first 10 hours of the Shop-a-thon grew at a faster pace than last year. This, of course, in spite of the website and app crashing at the start of the sale. We caught up with Jem Sabay, Amazon's vice president of Prime, from the Spheres at Amazon campus in Seattle on Monday before news of this glitch broke, and asked how they get the deals, the right deals, in front of the right customers. Take a listen.
You would be surprised. The launch of the Whole Food benefit for Prime members has been our most successful launch that we've had for any benefit launch. And I knew this going into it. I said at the time that we launched that this was our most important benefit launch since we launched Prime Video in 2011. But the adoption of Prime members to Whole Food benefits for the savings and for deals, and early signs also in the lead-up period to Prime Day has been truly phenomenal and very humbling. And so members have already saved over millions and millions of dollars through their purchases in Whole Foods.
What does a win look like at Whole Foods in particular?
Look, Prime Day for us really is just about is just a celebration event. We launched Prime Day 4 years ago in 2015. It's celebrating 20 years of Amazon as well as 10 years of the Prime program since its launch in the U.S. as well. And so what's important for us is really to try to engage as many members as possible. Make sure they have a great day, they find the right deals that they're looking for, and they walk away remembering why Prime is so great and why it makes their lives so much better every single day. And so this is really around a celebratory event, engaging with our members, and exposing new members to what is still the best shopping deal in history. A unique combination of shopping and entertainment benefits, and we keep getting positive feedback customers, and we continue to invest to try to make it better for them every year.
Amazon recently raised the price of Prime for the first time since 2014. Talk to me about customer feedback. Have you seen any reduction in renewal rates as a result of that?
No, we've seen, look, customers continue to, particularly most of them start through engaging with us through our shipping benefits. And then we see increasingly higher renewal rates as they start engaging with our entertainment benefits like Prime Video, Prime Music, and Prime Photos as well. And, many members will start off with shopping, but then they'll stick around for the entertainment. And so we continue to be very humbled by the response that we've gotten. Last year on Prime Day, we added more Prime members than on any other given day in history until that point. And we're expecting a very big year this year as well.
Voice-based shopping has historically had its limits, and yet you're raising the stakes today. You've got cash prizes, a card, deep discounts for Alexa and voice-based shopping. Is it working, and in what categories?
Look, it's really across all categories, and it's also continues to be a great back-to-school shopping period as well. Last year, we sold more back-to-school shopping supplies than on any other day that year as well, and so customers were able to find and just do all of their back-to-school shopping in a single full swoop as well. And so we're really expecting strong engagement across all of our hot categories, including devices.
Is that with voice-based shopping specifically? I mean, talk to me about what trends you're seeing in terms of how people are using Echo to actually shop rather than just to play a song or answer questions.
Got it. Yeah. No, we are seeing customers engage with Prime Day in a variety of ways. I've purchased using my Echo devices many times, particularly for reordering, but also for great deals as well. And customers can go to any Echo device and ask them, Alexa, what are my Prime Day deals? And they'll get personalized recommendations for Prime Day deals. And we're really just trying to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to find the phenomenal deals that we have on offer today.
And what are you doing behind the scenes to make sure there aren't any hiccups? I mean, historically on Prime Day, there have been some issues, glitches, and people not being able to fill up their carts, some people not excited about the particular deals on offer. How do you make sure it's not like a rummage sale and that it really is a cause for celebration?
Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is we start planning for Prime Day the day after the prior Prime Day ends. It's a company-wide effort for us. We are very focused on making sure this is a great event. Most of those incidents that you're referring to were relatively minor glitches that we resolved very quickly, and customers are able to find the deals that they want very quickly.
That was some of my interview with Jem Sabay, Amazon Vice President of Prime. Still ahead, the startup Zoox is on the verge of transforming the entire transportation industry by creating self-driving robot taxis. We'll go behind the scenes. And later this hour, after Netflix's earnings stumble, should investors be worried that second quarter results from other big tech firms could fall flat? We will discuss. This is Bloomberg. Blue Origin completed the 9th flight of its New Shepard rocket on Wednesday. The company, owned by Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, is working toward flying humans to space for the first time as soon as later this year. The booster and spacecraft blasted off from the company's launch site in Texas shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern Time and then performed a test designed to ferry passengers to safety in case of an emergency. In the crowded self-driving space, Zoox is standing out by building an autonomous vehicle from the ground up. In the latest episode of Hello World, Bloomberg's Ashley Vance meets co-founders Tim Kentley-Clay and Jesse Levinson, who plan to make their robotic cars the go-to rideshares of the future.
We all make poor life choices. Take these two guys, for example. They're the founders of a self-driving car company called Zoox. And they've decided it makes sense to try and compete against this.
Waymo, the Google self-driving car project, Cruise Automation, Daimler, Baidu, Uber, and Lyft.
But Zoox is different. Its rivals are adding self-driving technology to existing cars. Meanwhile, Zoox is making a new type of vehicle for the self-driving age. Basically, Zoox is making a robot, and its early incarnation looks like the love child of the Matrix, Mad Max, and Transformers franchises. This is Tim Kentley-Clay. He hails from Australia, and down under, he was a well-known designer and ad guy. One day he had an epiphany, a vision of the future full of robotic vehicles, and came here to build them.
I sort of just saw the future of how the whole system could work. I said, okay, I need to find a brilliant computer scientist. And so that led me on a journey for 6 months, actually, when I ended up finding Jesse.
That brilliant computer scientist is Dr. Jesse Levinson, a Stanford grad who is sought after by none other than Google itself.
I actually visited Google X in 2013 to come and speak on my vision for autonomy. In talking, a fellow said there's this one guy and he's really good and we can't get him. So that was my signal to go and get him.
A lot of your colleagues have run off to companies like Google or Uber to retrofit a cars. What drew you to this particular task and this approach?
I've been working on self-driving cars since 2005, and it's pretty clear even back then that it was going to be one of the more transformative technologies for society. It wasn't enough to just solve the technology. You need a product and you need a business that makes sense. And I hadn't seen that in any other company until I met Tim, and he shared his high-level vision for what Zoox could be.
And that vision is a system of completely autonomous robotic vehicles that can be summoned just like a Lyft, or, dare I say it, an Uber.
We have a very clear vision of Zoox, which is that AI and mobility will take us out of the age of the automobile and into the next mobility age, which for us is robotics, autonomous transportation.
Yeah. Grab a little bit to the right.
Tim and Jesse take me to the Alameda Naval Air Station, where I'm about to get a test drive and see how a Zoox robot handles.
These are very unique vehicles. They're designed in a way that would only make sense if they're going to be fully autonomous. The powertrains are designed for full autonomy. They're fully redundant. They have dual high voltage batteries. They have dual low voltage architectures. You can see they're rigged with compute sensors. They can drive without any human intervention. This is VH4. This is VH5. Do you want to go for a ride?
Yeah, I do.
All right, jump in.
Zoox has placed cones on the tarmac. The robot is going to drive out and try to dodge them. But I get to do the whole test sitting backwards, because Tim thought it would be funny.
Keyboard holder. Time to meet my robot maker.
And with one swift keystroke, I give complete control of my life over to an AI.
That really doesn't get old, man. It's like being on a ride at Disney.
These AI robots crank through the course at 45 miles per hour, and the VH5 is set to rip through it at a delightful 75 miles per hour.
We can choose all-wheel steering, two-wheel steering, crab steering, dual motors, and then we have direction.
I like the crab steering.
Is it madness to take on many of the world's leading automotive and tech companies at the same time? Yes, of course it is. But I say go forth, Tim and Jesse. We all await our Lux robotic rideshare of the future.
That was Bloomberg's Ashley Vance. You can catch more of Hello World on Bloomberg.com. Up next, opening up the Android market. What does the EU decision against Google mean for its competitors, smartphone makers, and the Android platform? And a reminder, Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network at TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. It is a record that Google wishes it hadn't set. The European Union has fined the company $5 billion over its Android policies. That is the biggest fine ever in an antitrust case. The EU says illegal practices on Android mobile devices push Google services in front of users. Google was also ordered to change the way it puts search and web browser apps on Android smartphones. Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde traveled to Brussels to speak with EU Competition Commissioner Margrethe Vestager after the decision was made.
Emily, the key takeaways was the force of the way in which she described this. These are very serious illegal behaviours. I mean, you don't hear that often about such a significant company. The size of the fine, of course, is so eye-popping. $5 billion. Sure, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the amount that Google can afford. They've got more than $100 billion in terms of cash and short-term investments. But it is a record-breaking number. And she went into length trying to describe why to vindicate this sort of amount because of the dominance in search, the rewards that gave Google. The fact that they were so dominant, it means that they get a lot more chunk of change in terms of digital advertising revenue. And that's why, because it's been going on since 2011, she could sort of weigh this sort of fine, the $5 billion. And also, I think what's significant is, once again, she's talking tough while there are such strained relationships between the EU and the US.
So, Caroline, talk to us a little bit more about what the real impact will be here on Google. I mean, sounds like a lot of money, but for a company of that size, it's a drop in the bucket.
Right, but now it's whether they change the business model. They've been given just 90 days to change the way in which they currently tie in the likes of Google search and the Chrome browser into deals with mobile phone makers and telecom operators that they have to potentially been agreed exclusive in the past. All that has to be unwound within 90 days. Otherwise, they'll be fined even more, up to 5% of average daily revenues for every single day that they don't rectify the situation. But in the same way that with the shopping ruling that happened last year, when, of course, they felt that Google pushed their own search engine for shopping too much and were hampering competition there, they never gave a prescriptive ideal of what Google should go out and now do to change their business model. So I really pressed her on that. And here's what she said.
The obvious minimum is that the contractual restrictions, that they disappear. Because you find a lot of these things in the contract. Can't do this, can't do that. But it is for Google and it's their sole responsibility to make sure that this infringement comes to an effective end. And that, of course, remains to be seen what choices they make.
So she wants a change of contracts. That was clear. Also, though, I wanted to ask her, well, how do you make sure that this is effective? As I mentioned, with the previous, well, it was the last record fine, 2.4 billion euros, that Google got in terms of the practices of shopping in Google. They, once again, many complain that some of the tactics that they've used, the way in which they've changed their business model, hasn't actually rectified the situation at all. How can she ensure that competition will improve? Take a listen.
I think it's very important to see in the follow-up of the first Google decision that we have taken no decision yet. And that is, of course, for good reasons, because we cannot say that Google is complying with the decision. So that is very much an open question. And we will do the same thing. We will monitor if Google sort of lives up to this decision.
There's your hint. I think she's saying, look, we've been monitoring how Google has responded to the previous fine and the previous desire to change the way in which they promote their own shopping websites over and above other competitors. And at the moment, we can't say whether they comply. I think this is a veiled threat that Google, we might start finding once again on that respect, you have got to be able to comply to this new area of concern of ours, which is the Android operating system.
Google disagrees with this decision and says they will appeal. What exactly does Google need to do now?
Yeah, I think Google's already come out, and they not only do we see a lengthy blog post coming from Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, it also really trying to educate or try and put their point of view across in this statement, for example, saying really that today's decision rejects the underlying business model that supports Android, which has created more choice for everyone, not less. We intend to appeal, as you mentioned. Now, this is really Google trying to spell out that the mobile operating system they provide, Android, is free. It's an open source, free operating system. That has allowed mobile phones to increase in numbers, to become far cheaper, because the phone makers themselves didn't have to invest an awful lot in making operating systems of their own. They feel they've added to competition. They feel they've benefited the consumer. what if potentially the change to their business model is the operating system can no longer be free if they can't lock in revenues by ensuring that Google Search is the favoured search engine within the phone? So I think this is a key question as to how Google reacts, but clearly they feel that they've done the economy and the industry a favour rather than been a curse.
Google now has 90 days to end their illegal conduct, appeal aside. What's been the reaction there in Brussels, Caroline?
Yeah, it's been one of sort of a slight shrug of shoulders in that, yes, this is an eye-popping fine. Yes, they're going to have to change their business model. But actually, is it, firstly, too little too late? I think some people feel that there's been 2 years in the making since first shone a light on by the EU. They feel perhaps that Google's now got more than 90% in terms of market share for search. Really, can this change matters now? And I think, notably, perhaps, even though the fine is eye-popping, it doesn't always help rectify the competitive landscape. I caught up with one company which was affected by the previous fine, the previous ruling on Google's shopping. And this is the CEO, Richard Staples, of Kelku. And he's saying, look, maybe we need to go even further in terms of the way Google has to change.
We want to see a competitive marketplace. And at the moment, Google doesn't seem to be able to do that, and the construct it's in. A lot of us say, look, maybe the only way to do that is to break them up. We're not the only ones saying this. You've got, the Boston Globe said this the other 2 months ago, and you had the chief economist to the Competition Authority saying it only the other week, that this is the only way to enforce Google properly to fix these markets.
Now, I put that to Margaret Vestager, the Competition Commissioner, as to whether or not Google should be broken up. Is that the really only way you can do it? She thinks that that would push the discussion into the long weeds. It would take too long to make the market competitive. And I think overall, she feels that these companies do benefit the consumer in terms of they make good quality products. They just need to apply by the letter of the law in her mind's eye. Interesting to see how the US reacts and indeed whether US regulators start looking quite so closely, Emily.
That was Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde in Brussels. And on Thursday, President Trump weighed in on the record antitrust fine the EU slapped on Google. The president tweeted, quote, "I told you so. The European Union just slapped a $5 billion fine on one of our great companies, Google. They truly have taken advantage of the U.S., but not for long. Google is appealing the fine." Still ahead, the co-founder of Grab joins us for a lengthy sit-down. How the Asian ride-hailing giant fought off Uber and raised billions from investors like SoftBank and Toyota. This is Bloomberg. A former Apple engineer pleaded not guilty in federal court on Monday after being charged with stealing driverless car secrets for Chinese startup Xiaopeng Motors. Zhang Xiaolong was arrested just before boarding a flight to China for downloading proprietary files. After leaving his position at Apple, while Zhang admitted to downloading Apple files to his wife's laptop for continued access, ex-Motors claims he never shared confidential information from Apple. When it comes to ride-sharing here in the States, the first two names that come to mind are Uber and Lyft. But in Southeast Asia, it is a different story in the battle for ride-hailing supremacy. That market is expected to grow to more than $20 billion by 2025. And one of the top names in that space is Grab. Since its inception in 2012, Grab first beat out and now bought out its former rival Uber's operations in the area, as it operates in 225 cities across 8 countries. Now, Grab is setting its sights on creating a WeChat-like super app encompassing everything from maps and payments to food delivery. We spoke with the co-founder of Grab, Huiling Tan.
Every year is a new journey. When we first started the company, our initial ambition was to solve safety for taxis in Malaysia. And since then, we've just grown from strength to strength.
So 225 cities, 8 countries. What is the outlook for future growth? How much bigger can the market be for you?
So we actually just launched Grab Platform, which is our strategy to grow from a transport platform and ride-hailing company into much, much more. It serves food, logistics, payments, financial services, and we want to become Southeast Asia's everyday super app.
Talk to me about the vision here. Grocery delivery is one of the latest new ads.
Yes, so last week we actually launched a partnership with Happy Fresh for Grab Fresh, which brings grocery deliveries to all of our users across 8 countries. And we think this is tremendous because, groceries are actually the highest average household spend for all Southeast Asian families.
Do you think you could do all of these things well, though?
So this is why we're very focused on a partnership-first approach, and that's a critical pillar in how we're launching Grab platform. We want to bring together the best partners on board to leverage the assets that we already have. So to date, we have more than 100 million downloads. We serve more than 7 million drivers and agents. So we have the largest distribution network in Southeast Asia. And of course, the technology platform that has been built just for Southeast Asia.
So what new areas could we expect you to expand into? What are you considering?
So what we're focused on is everyday, not everything. So things like, of course, groceries. We've also launched a cycles platform with e-scooters and bicycle partners. And going forward, what I think you should not expect from us is things like massages or the ability to consign art a la WeChat.
And how do you guys make money in the partnership structure?
Yeah, so I think it's really different depending on what kind of business and what kind of services they're working with us. Our partners can partner with us on 3 types of methodologies. Like Happy Fresh, they're going to be fully embedded into our product. So the users will see Happy Fresh in the Grab app. So for that, they'll be using our services, our payments, deliveries, and there will be a service fee there. There are also types of partnerships where we partner with e-commerce players where they use different parts of our technology platform where we can see Grab Pay and Grab Deliveries as part of the checkout. So again, there are different kind of transaction fee there. And the third one is for them to engage in our platform a la Grab Rewards, which is the largest rewards platform in Southeast Asia right now, and also our new news content feed where we launched a partnership with Yahoo last week.
Now, as you guys are expanding, Singapore's antitrust agency recently accused Grab of having monopolistic power in its home market. I know you've said you disagree, you plan to appeal, but how?
Yes, so for context, last week, the Singaporean government, or 2 weeks ago, they launched a preliminary announcement on some of the investigations into the acquisitions. Firstly, we disagree with it. And of course, there is a formal appeals process, which we're in the process of doing, where we're writing in officially to them, as well as having ongoing conversations. So net, if you step back and think about why this is happening, right? Of course, this was one of the largest transactions Southeast Asia has seen. And we're not surprised the regulatory bodies are doing their jobs because they want the same things that we do, which is for the best customer experience for the citizens of Singapore in a way that's pro-innovation and pro-business as well.
So do you think you'll moderate your strategy at all as a result of these inquiries right now? I mean, it's interesting to have the antitrust agency saying this at the same time that you're saying you want to be a super app.
Think about what we've been doing over the last 6 years. Over the history of Grab, we've been doing this consistently, where we're creating markets and building new businesses via technology that changes status quo. Now, because of that, every time we do anything that adds value, it's growing and it's changing, it's building, in a way, disruption in a positive way. So all of our conversations with regulators to date have always been focused on, what we call a startup-like path. We work together to figure out how to deliver the best outcomes, but it always also takes a bit of time to figure out how to do it together.
Now, in the last year, Grab made a huge coup, getting Uber to swap its business in Southeast Asia for a 25.5% stake. That said, a merger between 2 former, very, very fierce rivals can be difficult. How is the integration going?
Actually, stepping back, it's actually been a fantastic experience so far. Of course, it's not been 100% smooth. Dara, though, now sits on our board. I actually just saw him 2 days ago in Aspen, and he's been a great board member. Operationally, the integrations are going well as well. All of the drivers are on board our platform right now, users, and it's been pretty smooth relative to the size of the deal.
Now, when they did this with Didi, I never quite understood it. I mean, how does the communication between you and Dara work? Because Grab and Uber are still competitors in other territories.
No. So firstly, Grab is very focused in Southeast Asia. and Uber no longer operates in Southeast Asia.
So you have no plans to expand beyond Southeast Asia?
I think that it's important to understand that Southeast Asia is a huge market with tons of opportunities, right? Population-wise, Southeast Asia is the third largest in the world. It's larger than North America. It's larger than the EU. So there's a ton of growth opportunities, which is why we're moving into a platform play and to become a super app for Southeast Asia.
So what are some of the issues that you and Dara are working through? Give me some examples of, the future challenges and the things that you discuss.
Actually, what we have been doing together with Dara is actually very much like him being a board member, like our other major shareholders. And he's been great at it. He's been able to bring the lens of being both an operator, a business partner, and now, of course, sitting on both sides, right? He gets to share what has worked at Uber, what hasn't as well, while he learns from my experiences as well.
Now, you mentioned that Grab was started to address safety, and a Grab driver was recently stripped and robbed in what was a harrowing sort of 12-hour ordeal. What are you doing to better protect drivers?
We're doing a lot. In fact, these incidents make us extremely sad because we know there's so much more that we can do, not just for passengers, but for drivers as well. So some of the recent things we've launched have been like emergency buttons, which are connected to local police enforcement. We've also started looking into passenger ratings, which historically were not needed. So net, I think it's really important to know that as the economy evolves, many different people are unfortunately taking means that are not great to earn an income. And we're doing what we can to make sure that we can fulfill the promise of becoming the safest platform in Southeast Asia. And right now we're 5 times safer than any alternative transportation, and we want to make it 0 safety incidents.
That was Grab co-founder Hui-Ling Tan. Coming up after Netflix's disappointing earnings results Monday, there's likely to be more scrutiny for big tech firms reporting. Can the industry keep up with bullish sentiment after outperforming the broader market this year? We'll discuss. This is Bloomberg. Texas Instruments has ousted CEO Brian Crutcher over a breach of the company's code of conduct. Crutcher resigned after less than 2 months on the job. The chipmaker said the violations are, quote, related to personal behavior that is not consistent with our ethics and core values, but not related to company strategy, operations, or financial reporting. Crutcher's predecessor, Rich Templeton, will resume the role on a permanent basis. Netflix's disappointing second quarter report raised a big alarm among investors this week as shares tumbled as much as 14%, their biggest drop in 2 years. The results were seen as especially surprising because of Netflix's massive growth the last year, which showed no signs of slowing down. But overall, big tech shrugged off this news, the NASDAQ 100 index hitting a new record on Tuesday. But do Netflix's results signal that there should be more caution going into earnings seasons? We spoke with Michael Purvez, Wheaton & Co.'s chief global strategist, and Bloomberg Opinion's Shira Ovide.
I've been continuing to overweight tech, for a few years now, including this year, for all sorts of reasons. But having said that, right now, if you look at the FANG index on a market cap weighted basis, it's actually at a higher PE than it was back in late January before all the volatility erupted there. And the stock price is not the index level for the FANG is not quite as overextended above working support as it was back then, but it is it's certainly up there. So I think, regardless of what you might think about the individual companies, it seems like right now, for the earnings season, for the other guys that are going to be coming later next week, it's, really the stars have to line up pretty perfectly. So a lot of caution is going to be needed here. But again, longer term, I would expect that any dip in Amazon, in Facebook, and Google will be pretty aggressively bought.
Well, and Shira, there's still a question of whether Netflix's subscriber miss is a blip, is it a speed bump, or is it part of a longer-term trend?
Yeah, and the interesting thing was it wasn't just the weakness in the second quarter subscriber numbers. Netflix was also forecasting a decline in third quarter subscriber numbers and subscriber additions. And look, maybe the company is being conservative with its forecasts, seeing what happened with its second quarter falling shy of its own guidance. But it's interesting that we're talking about sort of two soft quarters in a row for Netflix, which makes it a little bit harder to argue the blip scenario.
Now, Michael, we had an analyst at Bernstein in a note saying crowded trades are typically already priced for perfection, and as such, the stocks don't react much to incremental positive news, while negative news has a much more pronounced effect. And yet we've seen these stocks run up and up and up, even in the midst of volatility around Facebook and controversy around the Cambridge Analytica data scandal. Even Facebook has bounced back. So what should investors be skeptical about?
Well, look, I think there's a fair amount of caution that's been coming with this rally since the Facebook scandal erupted back in late March. And you can see that in the options market. If you look at put call skew for the NDX, that actually is much stronger than it is for the put call skew for the SPX, for example. Additionally, if you just look at the level of NDX volatility relative to VIX, it is in the that spread is in the top 10%, and it's been that way for some time. So what you're seeing here is that people are playing this recovery from the Facebook scandal, that rally, but they're going into it with a fair amount of protection, which I think is healthy, and may mean that whatever dips we get over the next few weeks out of earnings season are not quite as dramatic here.
That said, amidst the tech euphoria, if you take a closer look at the numbers of some of these companies, the valuations are still incredibly high. Take a listen to Rob Arnott, the CEO of Research Affiliates, earlier on Bloomberg Television.
Netflix and Tesla, my goodness, does any marginal buyer of Netflix or Tesla look at valuation ratios, or do they look at the story? I think in both cases they qualify as a bubble. Being a bubble doesn't guarantee that they'll underperform long term, but it makes it awfully likely.
Shira, are Netflix and Tesla in a bubble?
I mean, look, those are two stocks, and throw Tesla in there too, that have never traded based on their valuations, right? That either you believe those companies are going to be huge or you don't, and you apparently don't care what you're paying in terms of price to forward earnings or trailing earnings. So those three stocks, I think, are the exception. But if you look at companies like Microsoft and Google and Facebook, they're not terribly expensive stocks, in part because those companies have enormous earnings and enormous earnings growth and enormous margins, although the profit margins are coming down a little bit for those companies, at least at Google and Facebook. So those, some of the tech giants are really expensive, but not all of them.
And you summarized, Shira, Netflix as a religion, showing cracks in the foundation, and now people are asking questions about it. Expound on that further for us.
I mean, look, you put Tesla and Amazon in that religion bucket too. Either those are stocks and investment stories that either you believe or you don't. And the problem with those kinds of narratives, right, is if you have these data points like an earnings miss, it calls into question the entire belief of the faith system.
That was Michael Purves with Wheaton & Co. and Bloomberg Opinion's Shira Ovide. And that does it for this edition of the Best of Bloomberg Technology. We will bring you all the latest in tech throughout this week. We will stay on earnings in the week ahead with Alphabet, Facebook, and Amazon all reporting. Tune in each day, 5 p.m. New York time, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. And remember, Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network at TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.